Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about what I read in June. I read 6 books in June, which is a little bit less than my average, but I did read a really long book this month, so no complaints for me. I had a great reading month. Pretty diverse reading month in the sense of genre. And I also am going to talk about the 2 books that I'm in the middle of that I have not finished yet, but I did start reading in June, so I'm gonna talk about those a little bit. So let's just jump right in. The first book that I read in June was Born by Jeff Vandermeer. I love Jeff Vandermeer. I read the entire Southern Reach quartet now, and I, for one, like, not to get off on a tangent, but for one, I do think that the 4th book is absolutely worth reading. If you are looking into reading the Southern Reach, a lot of people, I think, do just stick to reading the original trilogy, but Absolution is definitely worth reading, in my opinion. I would still recommend reading them in the order they were released in, even though it's, like, technically a prequel. But it's a great, like, wraparound novel. It really brings everything full circle. And I would, especially with those books, recommend reading those, like, binging them. Like, I think that if you leave gaps, especially between reading the original trilogy and the 4th book, you will forget things that will help you really understand everything. But that was my quick little spiel about the Southern Reach. I'm blabbering, but anyway, highly recommend those books. I love them. And I would also highly recommend Born. This is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi about a woman named Rachel and her companion Wick, who are scavengers. Their world is basically, like, quite desolate. There is very few humans left after the company has basically destroyed society through capitalism, by the way. There's some great social commentary in this novel about taking care of the world that we live in and taking care of the people in it. But the main character, Rachel, is out scavenging one day when she comes across this thing. She doesn't really know what it is. It doesn't really look like a plant. It doesn't really look like an animal. It doesn't really look like a machine. But she's a scavenger, so of course she takes it and brings it home with her. And she names it Born. And we basically follow Rachel and Born and what Born comes to be, and how it brings up a lot of questions about humanity, which is, I would say, the biggest theme in this book is, like, what makes you human, what makes you living, what makes life worth it, what makes you want to be human, what makes you feel like a human. And Born is such a lovable character in this. Like, we get to see Born become a true companion to Rachel, and there is some very interesting dynamics between the characters because Wick is a little bit more paranoid, he's a little bit more secluded, he's very worried about what Born may be, and he doesn't like the fact that they have this thing in their home and they don't know where it came from or what it is or what it's capable of. This is a very heartwarming book, I would say. Like, there are parts of this that are sad, but I think generally the relationships built in this book are so heartwarming to me, and Born is a character that will absolutely stick with me. I loved him, and I wish I could have a plush of him, but unfortunately don't think that exists and would be quite difficult to create. But I would highly recommend this. I believe I gave this 4 stars. Potentially like a 4.25. I might have given it a 4.25, but we'll round to a 4 for the sake of ease. I really enjoyed this. I also love this cover. There is also a second novel that is not, I don't think, technically a sequel. I think it might be a prequel technically, just based on context clues, because it is called Dead Astronauts, and the dead astronauts are addressed in this novel, but I believe that that is as far as they are connected, just that they're in the same universe. But I probably will pick that up eventually, I'm not, like, chomping at the bit to pick it up right now, and I have a lot of other things on my docket first, but I'm hoping to get to that at one point. But yeah, that was Born by Jeff Vandermeer. The second book that I read in June was What Was She Thinking / Notes on a Scandal by Zoe Heller. Notes on a Scandal is the name of the adaptation, which I believe is why it is now some of the novels are called Notes on a Scandal, because of the adaptation, I think. But this novel basically follows a high school teacher who has an affair with one of her male students. And it is not written from the perspective of either of the people involved in the affair. Rather, it's written from the perspective of a coworker and friend of the woman having the affair, which I think is a fascinating perspective to tell a story like this from. It is obviously very disgusting to read about. It's not graphic, like, I want to make sure that that's known. It's not overly graphic. That is not really my thing. It's not like a Tampa situation. I haven't read Tampa. I've heard a lot about it. It is not like that, I promise. If that's something that you would want to avoid, it is not like that. It really is a commentary. And I think it's a critical commentary because it is talking about a female predator, which, as we all know, is not something that there is a whole lot of media and awareness around. The especially book space, I feel like, is very saturated with the male predator, female prey situation, like the My Dark Vanessa, the Lolita of it all. It's much more concentrated in that dynamic in our community. But I think it's really obviously incredibly important to bring awareness to the fact that female predators do exist and can be absolutely as disgusting and detrimental as male predators. But as I was saying about the narrative of this, we are being told basically through diary entries from the perspective of this coworker who, in and of herself, is a strange character. She is obsessive and almost stalkerish with the female teacher who is in the affair. And it's hard to read in parts because when there are parts where you would really hope that someone in this position would do something, and she doesn't do anything. The most that she does is she goes to the woman having the affair and she says, "You need to stop doing this." And that's the most she does. That's the end of it. She doesn't go to the supervisor at the school. She doesn't go to the police. She doesn't go to the child's parents. She does almost nothing. She does virtually nothing to keep this from happening because she so badly wants to be friends with this woman. She's obsessed with her, and she just wants to feel loved by this woman. And I think that that is such an interesting element to pull into this story, just to watch it all go downhill, and then to see in the aftermath of this affair our narrator continue to support this predator is disgusting. I do think that it's worth reading. I think it's incredibly well written. I gave it 4 stars. Obviously, this is not the kind of book that you necessarily enjoy, but I do think I definitely got something out of it in the writing style and the character study of it all. I personally believe that it is worth it to read about bad characters. I don't think that that's a hot take. Like, it's important to not always be reading about perfect people, because we are not perfect people. Obviously, the vast majority of us are not this bad of people, but I think you can gain a lot from reading about the don'ts, like what you shouldn't do and how you should never behave in situations like this. But I would recommend this if this is the kind of thing that you would have an interest in reading about, obviously. I personally don't shy away from reading things that are a little more taboo because I think it's interesting. I think it's fascinating to read about these people. Obviously, these are not real people, but there are real people like this, and we're not going to go down that path. It's horrifying. It's really horrifying. But anyway, I talked about that one for a long time. The third book that I read in June was Mother of Death and Dawn by Carissa Broadbent. Oh my goodness. 5 stars. 5 stars. Certainly my favorite book of this month. really up there for my favorite book of the year, quite frankly. I loved this book. This is truly an epic. This is an incredible finale. It really wraps up the trilogy incredibly well. For an 800-page book, almost, there was not one page that I was bored or felt like I wanted to skim. Not one page was I uninterested. I love the characters in this story so much, and I'm so sad to see them, be done. I'm so sad that this is the end of their storyline, but I think it was concluded in a beautiful way. It was just, oh, it's so good. It's so good, and I cannot wait to read The Crowns of Nyaxia. The 5th book is about to come out in, very soon. Very soon. I think in the next month, potentially, next 2 months. I could be completely off base, but I know it's coming out this year, obviously. And I'm not sure if the 6th book will be the final one or not. In a way, I hope it is, because then I won't have to wait as long. But this is incredible. I'm not really going to talk about the plot too much, because it's the 3rd in the series. And if you want to hear about the 1st book, I would recommend going back and watching my May wrap-up, where I talk about the 1st book and give you a little bit more of a plot description. But I'm so glad I got this copy on my hands used, which I was hunting, because this is a pretty recent release, so it was kind of hard to find used. But I was able to find the 1st and the 3rd book used, and I got the 2nd book on Book Outlet, so I now have the full trilogy, which is so exciting, because I probably will be rereading these in my future. I adored this novel. Loved it. The only note I have is about the bonus epilogue, which I believe was added just in this recent reprint. Obviously, as with most fantasy novels, there is a gap in time between the end of the bulk of the novel and the epilogue. And I enjoy the epilogue in most stories. I know some people don't care about the epilogue. I liked the epilogue in this. However, the bonus epilogue takes place between the end of this novel and the 1st epilogue. So you read the epilogue, and then when you get to the bonus epilogue, you go back in time, which I thought was a little bit messy, in my opinion. I think it wasn't. I also think that the scene that is the bonus epilogue was not necessarily necessary. I could have gone without it. She says specifically in the acknowledgments that it was a scene that she had originally wanted to include and chose not to. I wish she had either originally included it or not included it at all, or potentially gone in between, put it before the original epilogue. I know that would maybe be confusing, but I just didn't like that it was a non-chronological bonus epilogue. Didn't make sense to me. That was my only qualm, is that felt a little bit weird and out of place. I thought that what was told in it was cute and all, but I didn't think it was necessary. So that's my thoughts on this beautiful, amazing work of art. I love this. And then 4th, I read My Friends by Frederick Bachman. 2 5-stars back to back this month. Instant 5-star. So good. So good. No notes. Genuinely, no notes. Not one. It was incredible. And at this point, I'm feeling like Frederick Bachman is never going to let me down. I have only read 2 of his books, but from what I have heard, I'm not thinking I'm going to be let down. This novel is so good. It's so heartwarming. It is true, 100% found family. If you are someone who enjoys found family in a novel, this novel is found family, to its core. It follows Louisa, who is an orphan who has recently turned 18, and throughout her childhood, she has had this postcard with a work of art on it that she loves very much, that she feels very personally connected to. She is an artist herself, and she feels very inspired by this piece of art. And then when she turns 18, she runs away, and she has a very serendipitous encounter and happens to meet the artist of this painting that she loves so much. And basically what ensues is that she ends up meeting a friend of the artist, and they go on this journey together, and he tells her all about the childhood that he had with the artist and their friend group. And it is just hits you right in the heart. It is all about childhood and childhood friends and time and how it feels to lose people who are so important to you and who were there for you during your critical period of your life. How it feels to move on from those friendships or to maintain those friendships. And it is beautiful. Obviously, it's beautifully written because it's Fredrik Backman. Like, what more can be said? Obviously, it's incredibly written. The characters feel so real, and I just wanted to hug them so bad. So bad. This ripped my heart out. I cried so much reading this book. Like, I was like heavy breathing crying when I finished this book. I highly recommend this if you have any level of emotional strength. I would recommend reading this. It was incredible, and it is so summer. It's like a perfect book to read during the summer. If in my last video I had talked about summer recommendations, this would have been there. It is perfect to read during the summer because it is, like I said, about not just childhood and time, but about what summer means when you are a kid. Oh my gosh. Amazing. Incredible. So good. So good. Then I read Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. I really liked this. It wasn't my favorite C.G. Drews that I have read thus far. I have also read Hazel Thorne and You Did Nothing Wrong, and I would say I enjoyed both of those a little bit more than this, but I did still really like this. It had all of the classic C.G. Drews. Beautiful atmosphere, very eerie, very diverse characters, some great representation, all of the things that you would expect from a C.G. Drews novel. None of those things missed. They were all perfect and exactly how I would have expected them to be. Actually, wait, I didn't even talk about the plot of the book yet. This novel follows Andrew, Thomas, and Dove. Andrew and Dove are twins, and Thomas is a friend of theirs, and they are all attending boarding school together. And they're like this like dynamic trio, basically. They're all really good friends. Obviously, Dove and Andrew are siblings. There is some tensions between Thomas and Andrew. Thomas is an illustrator and Andrew is a writer, and oftentimes Thomas will illustrate Andrew's horror stories, by the way. And basically this novel follows them at school and what they have to do when Thomas's drawings start to come to life. Really fun premise. I really enjoyed the vast majority of this book. I would say up until maybe about 80%, I loved this book. I didn't think that it stuck the landing for me personally. I think that it would stick the landing for a lot of people. But the way, the choice that was made when it comes to wrapping up this novel didn't work particularly for me, because I think as someone who is very saturated in the horror space and has consumed a lot of horror media, I have seen this particular plot device too many times. Not to say that it's like a bad narrative decision at all. I don't think it was. I think it did make sense as a choice to end this novel. I would have personally loved to see something different, and something more original. I am being vague because I don't want to spoil anything, because I still would recommend this to people for sure. But I would have loved to see something perhaps a little bit more original than the choice that was made, though I know that is hard to do. Obviously, I'm not a writer. I know how hard it is for me to write something original. I've never written anything original in my life, but I would have loved to see something just a little bit different, and I would have rated this higher had there been a different ending. I gave it 4 stars, which is still a great rating, and like I said, I would still totally recommend this, and I think that there are a lot of people who think, like, this is a lot of people's favorite C.G. Drews book for good reason. And I think if this is not something that you have, like, I think I also was able to somewhat predict the ending. And I think if you don't have that experience and you are not able to predict that ending, then I think this would be a great novel for you to read. Like, wonderful. I think if I had read this when I was like 14. 5 stars. And that's not an insult. I hope that doesn't come off as an insult, but it just is like, I have consumed so much since then, and I think if I had read it at the beginning of when I like was really, really getting into the horror space, I've been in the horror space since I came out the womb, but I think I could have really, really loved it then. But instead of really, really loving it, I really, really liked it, you know? So yeah, that's my thoughts on Don't Let the Forest In by C.D. Drews. I did only read 6 books this month, but I also want to talk about an essay that I read, which is Why I Am Not Going to Buy a Computer by Wendell Berry. I love this. As someone who feels very mixed about technology and the future of technology, but I loved this. I thought this was so interesting and so funny. I think that Wendell Berry has so much wit. This includes the original essay, Why I'm Not Going to Buy a Computer, and also the follow-up response essay, Feminism, the Body, and the Machine. And he has some very fascinating things to say. This is only like 70 pages, and it's also obviously tiny and quite big print, so it was a one sitting, maybe like 30-minute read. But I would highly recommend this. I thought this was fascinating, and I'm sure you could read this online. I just have this little cute baby copy that I got for my birthday. But I definitely want to read more from Wendell Berry. I know that there are essay collections. I don't know why I said compilation. I know that there are essay collections of his that I would like to read. I want to read more essay collections in general. Actually, I really love reading essays because I also really love writing essays, but because I didn't go to school for English, I rarely get to read or write essays like academically, but I really like reading essays. So if you have read any essay collections that you would recommend, especially when it comes to like politics or social issues or religion, please let me know if you have any recommendations. I really enjoyed this and would highly recommend this. And then I reread Paradise Rot by Jenny Haval. I should have looked this up. I read this maybe 3 years ago. It's a little novella, little queer, weird, really weird novel about two international, actually only one of them is an international student in the UK. I believe they're in the UK. I don't think it actually explicitly says, but I think that is like implied, or maybe I implied that. But basically it is about a Norwegian woman who is basically studying abroad in the UK, and she comes to live in this little apartment with a very strange woman. This apartment has very thin, not even real walls. It is gross, for sure, in parts. I really like this novella. I reread it for a reason. I hadn't read it in a while, and I was like, I want to read this again. This is probably one of my favorite book covers that I own. Like, it's very simple. I don't really know what it is. I think maybe it's the text color. I love this cover. It's really reflecting. But, oh, hey, there's me. I really like this. I gave it 4 stars again on a reread. I gave it 4 stars the first time I read it as well. It's really good. They say, the lines between bodies and plants dreaming and wakefulness blur and mesh. Very true. I would recommend this if you like weird books about weird women. And that is everything that I finished this month. I also am in the middle of reading Difficult Loves by Italo Calvino, which I talked about briefly in my last video. I set an expectation that I would be able to finish it by the end of June, and I knew that I wasn't going to reach that because I move pretty slow with short story collections usually, because it's kind of like, I like short story collections a lot, but because it's not an ongoing plot, like once you finish a short story, at least for me personally, I find it sometimes hard to feel motivated to pick it back up, because it's not like, oh, there's a character that I want to know what's going on, because it's a whole new world. I'm liking it, I'm not loving it. I talked about that in my last video. But the other book that I'm reading, is Under the Banner of Heaven by Jon Krakauer. And I will be talking about this extensively in my July wrap-up. I love this. I'm loving this. I'm a little bit more than 50% through. It is about Mormonism and fundamental Mormonism, which is a controversial term, but I'm using it. Fundamental Mormonism, just because it's easy to say. It is fascinating, like I just said before with the essays. I love reading about religion and social dynamics, and it's so good. It's so fascinating, and I will be picking up everything else that Jon Krakauer has written at this point, because last month I read Into the Wild and I loved it, and now I'm reading this and I love it even more. And I'm definitely going to buy a physical copy because I think there's so much I want to annotate in this, and there's so much in this that I want to be able to reference and tell people about. It is hard to read in parts. There's one chapter in specific that actually made me feel sick to my stomach, and I felt like I was going to throw up everywhere. But like I said, I need to pipe down and save what I have to say until I'm done reading, and I talk about it in my July video. But yeah, that is what I am currently reading, and that is all of the six and a half if you count the essay, books that I read in June. Great reading month overall. Really, really good stuff. I don't think that I'm going to be getting this out today. I'm hoping to get it up by the 3rd at the latest, and then I will have my mid-year book freakout tag out soon after that. Hopefully not any more than... I want to have it out within the first week of the month, for sure. That's the goal. But, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, hanging out in my corner of the internet. I hope you have a great rest of your day, morning, evening, afternoon, night, whatever time it may be when you were watching this and wherever you are. Please like and comment, subscribe if you like me and you want to see more.